Hello and greetings from the cave yet again, and so far it's been about a week. Yeah, about a week, and it's not bad. It's been pretty good. It's dry, surprisingly. I did mention last time about joking about some damp bit in the side, and it was a bit of a joke. Like, it hasn't been heavily raining, and I've been checking out the weather, and for the next few weeks it's going to be pretty dry, luckily, because I don't know, I wonder what rain's going to be like in here, but luckily I'll be out of here by then because I am moving, and this is just a very temporary measure just to make most of the lockdown, because at that time I just wasn't sure whether I was going to be able to go to the studio or not, and it seems that for work purposes you can go places, but who knows what's going to happen. But I thought I should do a quick video about what was going on the safety video, and this is just the setup that I've got in here. And yeah, I've got quite a lot of comments about what am I doing, how am I sequencing things, how you're making it, you know, sound like that. And I thought, why, let's just chat, let's have a little chat. So this is a new toy that I've had for about 4 months now after finally getting it. It's pretty good to finally have a Cirklon. It's pretty mad, and basically this is what was sequencing the whole thing, and it's kind of like the Behringer Beatstep Pros. Like, you can see some similar design choices between the sequencing of this and in the Beatstep Pro. However, both of them have their pros and both of them definitely have their cons. This one is very, very complicated. There's a lot of things going on, and you sort of have to be very well versed with it to get the most out of it. And it's taken me, I must admit, that I've spent a long while sitting with the manual and just learning it, because yeah, there's a few shortcuts here and there that don't really make complete sense, but this, when you finally get it all and you master it, which I'm not really there yet, but I'm getting close to sort of being very proficient with it. It's a force to be reckoned with, but you are sort of stumbling quite a lot at the start, being like, well, I can't understand why I kind of twisted that bit, but then it all makes sense. There's two big pros that the Cirklon has over something like the Beatstep Pro, and that is the fact that you can have, well, you can have 16 instruments at once, and they can all be polyphonic or monophonic or something like that. In fact, you can have even more than that. I seem to think you can have an unlimited, maybe 32 or unlimited. I mean, there's a big difference between 32 and unlimited tracks. You can actually have it assigned to a load of different tracks. It's got 5 MIDI outputs at the back with both 5 MIDI in and out. And then it's also got like an expansion port and stuff like that. It's quite crazy the amount of things you can actually plug into the damn thing to get it to sequence up. And yeah, it's mental. I've got everything plugged up to it, and it's just really quite useful. The other advantage that this has over the Beatstep Pro, and it's quite a big advantage for me, is it can go up to 128 steps. You can play in a sequence straight away off the bat, really quick, 128 steps. In fact, you can play it to an unlimited length on this thing. The Beatstep Pro only goes up to 64, which is perfectly fine for most people. However, for me, a lot of my songs and a lot of my riffs and stuff actually they just can't be played, and Safety is a very good example of that. So if you notice that Safety, it was a song that I wrote maybe about 3 years ago. Well, I had the melodies in my head, and I've been playing it different iterations on tour, kind of writing it, and I've kind of gone back to basics on it with that performance. And it's like, yeah, it was in my head, and I really wanted to play it live, but it's very hard to do on the Beatstep Pro because you can't just play 128 steps. And I tried loads of different things by reducing the resolution. It just didn't make it as good. And the reason why I've made the riff so long is because when it's a long 128 step long riff, it means that you don't have to vary the actual chords as much as you would with less chords, and it still sounds interesting and progressive, and you can kind of hold somebody's attention for longer with a longer sequence. Not an infinitely long sequence, because then you haven't got anything to kind of like keep yourself reminding, playing the game in your head. But it's like 128 steps to me is like bish bosh bash, a prime number, but each to their own, I guess. The downside to this, I still haven't 100% got to grips with making the most of drum sequencing on here. I think it's a lot more immediate, fun, and just you know, a lot easier to use for making drums is the Beatstep Pro. Hence why I use the Beatstep Pro in that video for the drums, and then this for all of the musical instruments. Yeah, the drums are much better on that. You're able to ratchet the instruments and perform it a lot more fluidly, where you can't really do that on this one, which is a bit of a shame, but I'm actually trying to figure out a way of making an interface for this that should make it better to make drums on it. You might remember I did the live Desperado Vespa video about 3 weeks ago, and I made this like drum hitting thing. Well, that's kind of like, it was my thinking of having a MIDI in and MIDI out, so you have the drums signaling and telling you when you've played them in, but then I would make one that was made specifically for this, but I haven't figured out the best way of doing it yet. So that's one of the downsides to this, is I think the drums are still in the Beatstep Pro's court, but this is just massively more useful in, you know, other things. But you never know, Arturia might be coming up and cooking up some things like polyphonic and stuff like that, and maybe even 128 steps, but this one, pretty damn good. The other thing is, this is about 6 times the price of the Beatstep Pro now. However, if you have 6 times the amount of stuff for a Beatstep Pro, because I actually have 6 Beatstep Pros and I'm able to do everything that those 6 Beatstep Pros do with just this Cirklon and 1 Beatstep Pro. So it sort of works out the same price if you think about it that way. Yeah. I will be covering the Cirklon a lot more in the future. I just thought I should just have a little quick chat about it, because there's good bits and there's bad bits, and if you have never heard of this sequencer before, I definitely recommend you checking some videos and looking at it. It looks extremely complicated to start with, but it's actually quite simple and straightforward, and very versatile and deep, you know, and all that stuff. But this is actually sequencing everything. It's sending the clock out to the MIDI in the back of the Beatstep Pro, which I'm using to sequence the drums. But not only that, this actually sequences the drums as well. I know, head fudge. So I have a MIDI merger that merges the signal from this one and the Beatstep Pro, so I'm able to use the best parts of this and that in the same phrase. So I'm able to do the ratcheting and quick performance on the Beatstep Pro, but if I want to recall a pattern that I want to use regularly, I just jump over here. The other thing that I haven't quite figured out, and I may be being silly, is on the polyphonic CK patterns on this, I can't work out how to divide the clocks, which I usually use, like I did in safety, to break down. It's a trick that I find myself doing quite a lot. Basically, this is just a really simple drum beat, and how you make it break down into halftime. Like, I basically do a fill, you know, like you do the fill with the roll thing, so you do a fill, but then you go over here and press shift, and it makes, and this is the multiplication of the clock. So you can have 132, which doubles it, or you can go down to 1/8, and then you go back, and it goes back to that part. So what I would do would be like drum beat, and then it's as quick as that. It's half time, and then you want to go back, make a fill, and you're back to double time. And it's just that way of making a variation on it, and that's what I love about the Beatstep Pro, is you can play that sort of stuff and make it fluid and move, and I still haven't quite found something like this in the Cirklon. So they both have their pros and cons, hence why I'm using both of them, if you see what I mean. I've removed the MIDI to CV because I'm actually working on a new one that should be up in the shop very soon. This is another one of the Cosmo format, which is coming along. I've got 6 modules out already, and this should be maybe the 8th, but after a delay and some other things. However, the first bass that comes, the first synth that actually comes in that, is literally just this voice that I've been building up for years now. Basically, it's basically 3 oscillators that go into an MS-20 style filter, which then goes into one distortion, into a valve distortion, and then into the VCA, and it's literally just that. And the 3 oscillators kind of bounce off each other and make them they're not too perfect with each other, which makes it all sound just a bit rowdy. And then you mess around with the envelopes and the resonance, and it's pretty funky, and it's pretty simple and nice, and it's got octaves and all that stuff. By the way, if you want to build this, there are panel and PCB designs on my shop, so if you want to make the oscillators or the filters or something, there is a link below if you're interested in that. So that is the first synth that comes in, and then I play on that the MS-20, which is actually suddenly transformed to an MS-10. I need to do a bit of work on that MS-20. It was getting a bit frustrating, as some of the pots are a bit sketchy. I need to replace them. They're a little bit broken. I got it cheap. So but this one, it was literally just a square wave, the simplest patch you can do, and then you're just adjusting the frequency modulation to bring in some vibrato, and then it's as simple as that. But then then after that comes in, then I brought in the bass line, which is actually this beast. I'm so chuffed to have this. Basically, it was pretty much a year ago. I was on eBay and I was just like, this came up. It's a Club of the Knobs System 15 replica, and it is awesome. And it came up on eBay. Nobody was bidding on it. It seemed like an alright price. It was a fair price, and it was yeah, pretty much exactly a year ago. And I raided the piggy bank and was gone. I was like, you know what, you live once. Bye savings. I got in the van and I went over and picked this thing up, and I have not looked back since. The thing is with buying something like this is the worst happens is, you know, you can just shove it back on eBay and sell it again. It's not like the money has disappeared. It is still there somehow, unless somebody runs off with it, which I hope not. But this basically was playing the nice fat bass line, and it is literally just 2 oscillators going into the filter. It's a very standard you know, like mini Moog style voice, but it was really this thing just sounds humongous. And then this is going into down here. You've got I think it was literally just going into the LA2A copy by Clark Technic, just to give it a bit more Also, I have the grandmother plugged in, which is actually basically exactly the same as that. The grandmother is actually built and based on the circuitry, the exact same circuitry that this thing is built and based on. So these things are pretty much exactly the same in sort of routing and sound. They're basically the same thing. They sound reasonably similar. It's just this one is like a third of the price of that thing, so you can get the same sounds as that, but this was playing a high lead at the end. It was kind of padding up the bass line, and yeah, all I've got is MIDI in the back coming from the sequencer at the top going into here, but everything is actually plugged into this. This is what I've mentioned before, and I use this on all of my gigs, all tours and stuff. And basically what this is it's a Behringer X32 Rack. Say what you want to say about Behringer, but I'm very invested in this mixer. It's completely transformed the way I do live gigs for probably the last 2 years. All you do is you plug everything in and it's already mixed. It's really quick. It makes setup time. You can set up for a festival or something. You can be set up in 10 minutes because your mix is done. Everything is there. It's all ready. The EQ is in here. And then, yeah, you just go out to the main mix. And the main mix just comes out of these two, which is rather layerily plugged in. And there's a snake going off to the modular and stuff. But yeah, it's all basically mixed into here. And what I did with safety is these two outputs were literally plugged into the camera, and yeah, we were away and I was just playing. So it is pretty damn simple. With this setup that's in here, I do actually have over here in this mush of wires, this is the Behringer SD16, and this is basically just an expansion module that plugs in via a Cat5 cable into this, which means that this has only got 16 inputs on its own, but then you plug that in and it's got another 16 inputs, and now it's a 32 channel mixer, which is pretty beefy if you ask me. But yeah, I hope that was useful. There was a bit of information on that stuff, and I hope it maybe answered some sort of questions that some people had. I'm not sure, but yeah, anyway, I've got to get back to work. I've got to work on this, and I've also got to finish a couple of lyrics, which are always a pain in the ain. But yeah, anyway, I'm nearly finished setting up for another live stream that I'm going to do on Patreon at some point this week, and I'm just filling it up more and more. I've got the Sega set up, I've got the NES set up, and every single thing is plugged in to the Cirklon, including the Oberheim, which I'm using this for. So this is literally only controlling the drums that are on the modular. The Oberheim and the CR78, for instance, are coming from the Cirklon. So it's pretty cool that this thing can control so many things. It's like the mothership, and I might put it in a rack. I'm not sure yet, but there'll be more information on this to come, and I've got a few more videos on sequencers coming up. So if you're interested in trying to find sequencing solutions, then keep an eye out. Watch this space. Anyway, yeah, take care now. Goodbye.